Are you serious? Are you serious? How rare is albinos? This might shock you, but an albino, what a phenomenon it is, whether it be people or animals. Now, albino animals are beautiful. I mean, they really are. Rare creatures that suffer from, of course, a defect called albinism. This defect is characterized by the absence of pigment in the skin. Matter of fact, it's often considered an imperfection, yet an albino animal are often targeted by humans and wildlife alike. An albino is such a rare group of genetic disorder that causes the skin, the hair, even the eyes to have little or no color at all. Albinoism is also associated with vision problems, according to the National Organization for Albinism, and hypopigmentation. 1 in 18,000 to somewhere between 1 in 20,000 people in the United States have some form of albinoism. Now, some animals are even more rare than that. It's quite stunning, really. And there's different types, of course. There's totally different types. But recently, there was an albino dolphin just spotted off the coasts of California. Extremely rare. Now, in places like some parts of Africa, some of the witch doctors, some of the people involved in witch doctors, voodoo type black magic, believe that if they get the arm, if they can cut off the arm of an albino and use it, they can cast spells. So if you got 1 in 20,000 people are an albino, so you already got that rare. Then to actually get a hold of somebody that's an albino and cut their arm off to use for black magic or voodooism or some type of satanic black magic to send hexes, curses, different types of spells, is really rare. So it's very rare to find an albino. Then to take a person who's an albino, cut their arm off and use it is even more and more difficult, and then get away with it. So you can understand how rare it would be. But occult albinism is something that people do. Unfortunately, it's horrific. It's just awful. But this is how evil things are getting. And in these last days, you're going to see more and more wicked behavior, more demonic activity that will happen. It's unfortunate. It really is, and it breaks my heart. But albinos, it's a defect. It's one of several genes that produces or distributes the malign causes in albinism. Matter of fact, the defect may result in one of the absence of the malign production or a reduced amount of malign production. The defect gene passes down from both parents to the child and leads to albinism. So if only one parent has the gene, it will not pass it down. It takes 2 parents with the gene. And they don't have to be albinos. But they may not I guarantee they don't know it. But they have that very rare gene. And if 2 parents have it, then one of their children may actually come down with albinism. Now, albinism is an inherited disorder that is present at birth. Children are at risk of becoming born with albinism if they have parents with albinism, because obviously if you're an albino, you're carrying the gene for sure, or parents who carry the gene who may not even know they're carrying the gene of albinism. And so the absence of the color of hair, your hair's white, skin's all white, you have no pigment. Even the eyes sometimes are just white. Lighter than normal color of hair, skin, or eyes, patches of skin that have an absence of color. Albinism occurs with vision problems, which may include cross eyes sometimes, sensitivity to light, a lot of them do, involuntary rapid eye movement, impaired vision or blindness even. Astigmatism is also involved in albinism. And the most accurate way to diagnose albinism is through genetic testing to defective genes related to albinism. Less accurate ways of detecting albinism include an elevation of symptoms by your doctor or an electrotenogram test. This test measures the response of the light-sensitive cells in the eyes to reveal eye problems associated with albinism. What are the treatments? Well, there's no cure for albinism. However, treatment can relieve some of the symptoms and prevent sun damage, because you will get sunburn if you're an albino. I mean, are you serious? Sunglasses to protect the eyes from the sun's ultraviolet rays, protective clothing, and a lot of sunscreen to protect the skin from the UV rays, prescription eyeglasses to correct vision problems, and surgery even on muscles of the eyes to correct abnormal eye movements. What's the long-term outlook for someone who is an albino? Well, most forms of albinism don't affect lifespan, but there can be, because of health problems associated with the syndrome, you may not have as high a quality of life. People with albinism may have to limit their outdoor activities because their skin and eyes are just too sensitive to the sun. And UV rays from the sun can cause skin cancer very easy and vision loss in some people who are albinos. Okay? So it's very rare, and you can see the picture I used for this this video of an albino lion, male lion, an incredible creature, but quite extraordinary. Could you imagine seeing an albino, full-grown male lion in the wilderness? Just would be remarkably impossible almost. You would be stunned by such a encounter. Even some of the historically, some of the ancient writings talk about albino deer and albino kangaroo and albino different bears. Of course, polar bears are already white, but we're talking about grizzly bears that could be albino. Albino animals that they would be worshipped sometimes, very sacred, considered in some cultures deeply sacred, mystical. Some of the Native American Indians, some of the African nations, they would worship an albino animal as a god. So very rare, and even albino people have been worshipped before, but mostly in Africa, albinos, one of their limbs being cut off and used for witchcraft is something that's very, 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 very sad. But I'll be back with more sensitive information for you to reveal. But this is a subject that strange to talk about, really. But a lot of people are curious about the potential paranormal involved, because you have what's called the tall whites. You've heard of those. Some would say they are half-breed. What I mean by hybrid, hybrid breeded individuals. The Nazis set up their scientific labs down in Antarctica right during World War II, before World War II, in which they would find some of the tallest, blonde hair, blue-eyed, tall men and tall, attractive women, light skin, blue-eyed, light hair, blonde, and they obviously were breeding, okay, and genetically trying to create the perfect Aryan race. Well, in the process, a lot of tall whites were born. Some say that they were even crossbred with the fallen ones, similar to what you read in the book of Enoch and even in the Bible in Genesis chapter 6. So some folks think there's a connection between the albino, when people are albino individuals, and the